Be strong.
Welcome back to the TRIAX Performance channel. My name is Rob Dells, and as always, I'm joined by Damon Bednarski. Welcome to you, Damo.
How you going, Rob?
I'm very well, thank you. Apologies to Sean, who couldn't make it again today, so we're working without him in his absence. But today we're talking about a pretty important topic, again, following mental health, and that is the mental health for athletes, particularly in the social media era, I guess you'd call it nowadays with professional sport, and how social media does provide a good platform for these athletes in terms of marketability, but also the darker side of social media and the fact of constant negative behavior from fans and some bad treatment to athletes from those people who like to indulge in that sort of stuff behind a keyboard. So today we're going to talk about that, some of the conundrums that athletes face and the general landscape around access to athletes, particularly in the social media era in which we're in. So I suppose, Damo, the impetus for this discussion surrounded the incidents surrounding Naomi Osaka at the French Open. I'm not sure whether you across this, or do I have to give you a bit of a recap?
No, I'm across what happened with Naomi.
Good. So for anyone who isn't, in terms of Naomi, she cited some mental health reasons following a decision to not participate in a post-match press conference, and said that basically said that they promote a negative stimulus for your mental health. I think that's paraphrasing there, but it was generally along those lines. So, and then what happened is that she pulled out of the French Open as well. So it's that instance has probably raised a bit of a spotlight on, I think, the access players give to press conferences and some how, I guess, maybe journalists or stories written about athletes can adversely affect their mental health, given how connected we are as a society now, given everything's basically digital, online, and easily accessible from anywhere in the world. So it's a pretty big issue, Damo.
It certainly is. I know, having spoken to quite a few athletes, a lot of them tend to not be on any social media or cut themselves off from a lot of platforms because of how much slander and stuff is out there towards them. If anything goes wrong, that's the first place for people. First place for people to crack up is to send out a tweet when they miss their multi by one disposal or something like that. So
that's the problem.
I can completely understand that they wouldn't want to be on there because they're scrutinized enough as it is in the print and the TV media, let alone when you've got every Tom, Dick and Harry that can post on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram about their performance. It certainly would be difficult to deal with.
That's a problem, isn't it? Is a problem. I think what you just said there is that it's basically, we've got a bit of a deadly cocktail now in terms of, I guess, athletes' mental health, and there's a few different factors that go into that cocktail. The first one is obviously accessibility to athletes, whether that's on social media or whatnot, that athletes do see the information that's written about them. So you combine that with fans that are reacting to a result first and foremost, and then you've got gambling as well, which does tie into that. So like, as you just said there about, missing a leg in your multi or whatever, that's become folklore almost, in terms of, people posting that stuff online that, they've missed a leg in the multi because of this and this. And then they inbox players and tell them that they've stuffed up their multi, they would have won X amount of money, which is just ridiculous. But that creates a bit of a deadly cycle now in terms of athletes, where they are on the receiving end from Joe Blow, who's, missed a leg in their multi and basically, done their money. And it's ridiculous, mate, because these people can, jump on there and they're seemingly free to say and do whatever they like, and they don't really receive much consequence back, do they? Whereas an athlete does that, then they can't do it because of the platform in which they're standing on.
There's serious ramifications for athletes.
If they do it.
Post stuff on social media, or if they bite back, they're straight away shunned for it. But anyone can sort of put up a tweet. And as I was just saying to you before we came on air, there's an English cricketer, Ollie Robinson, who's getting in trouble for tweets he put up 10 years ago that were deleted and have been resurfaced, and he's been banned from playing international cricket until that's resolved.
Right.
But we could put up a tweet abusing an athlete or doing something like that, and there's no ramifications for us. So it certainly is, the standards are very different, but it's also very difficult for athletes because they're put in difficult positions in terms of that. They've just got to cop it on the chin, don't they? They're not allowed to.
Well, that's it, because they've got so much more at stake, though, athletes, don't they? Like, they have, they obviously want to be marketable themselves to, get some third-party money in away from their playing contract or wherever it might be. So they need to remain sort of diplomatic in what they say, and they can't do anything, that gets them offside to people, but they're still, I guess, forensically assessed in terms of their performance or anything, even their appearance as well they get hammered for. So you're basically on this hiding to nothing really as an athlete, where you'll cop it from journalists. They'll write stories about you, and then when they publish those stories, and fan bases are then potentially swayed by what journalists have written about, particular narratives or how people are portrayed, and then that just spins out a vicious cycle. Now, obviously, there's some really good stuff that happens on social media, but I think the important point we're talking about here is just the level of scrutiny that athletes are in, that athletes 20, 30 years ago didn't probably feel or didn't probably have the same amount of attention based upon them. Obviously, there's exceptions like Michael Jordan. We were talking about basketball. Obviously, he would have had plenty of sort of physical interaction with fans. And then, like, if you want to go, say Yao Ming, he was big in basketball as well for China. Again, similar sort of thing there. But this 24/7 sort of access and scrutiny towards athletes is just unprecedented, and something that the likes of people from the last 50 years just haven't experienced.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, if you're a state cricketer or a professional soccer player in Australia pre-A-League days, you'd be able to walk down the street without anybody recognising you. You wouldn't be copying any, slack for the 10 you made on the weekend.
Yes,
in
exactly.
A Shield game or a one-day game, because nobody knew who you were. Now that you could be making your debut for your state, and millions and millions of people get to watch it on Fox Sports, the live streams, and then they can comment on your performance. At that point of your career, you haven't really been prepared how to deal with the media and the pressures of that either. So I think the consequences of those types of comments for people early in their career that maybe are in those sports that aren't as well trained in media, it's certainly that could completely destroy your career and your confidence if you're copying that type of slander so early on in your career.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting as well is that even if someone comes up to you in the street and tells you how bad you're going, that doesn't happen as frequently as what would happen online, because you've got to be pretty gutsy or stupid to go up to someone physically and give it to them about a performance. So and that's what it is. It's just easy and it's gutless to have a crack at someone on the various forums as well. But I think in terms of Naomi, when she was talking at press conferences and how the questions that she would be asked would promote a bad or a substandard mental health for her, and then how those questions were then probably written and the narrative pushed out from there. But I think there is also a big conundrum with all this, and I hope that you'll agree with me when we talk about it, is that athletes earn a lot of money to do what they do, because they're highly specialized and they obviously have a pretty rare skill set for most people. And tennis is probably the best example where there's a higher sense of equality between male and female athletes in terms of prize money, particularly at Grand Slams, where that's generally pretty equal. But where this money comes from is where the conundrum is, because athletes need to be remunerated for what they do. But a lot of that money comes from commercial backing in terms of sponsors and media as well. So in terms of broadcast deals, media rights, that all has a monetary value that then goes to the athlete's wallet effectively as well. So I think the big conundrum is here, well, these broadcasters and media, they need the access because they need to make a return on investment that is going to the athlete as well. So it's a pretty difficult thing about press conferences and access, isn't it? Because you can't bite the hand that feeds you, can you?
No, and I think tennis is probably one of those difficult ones where you play for yourself. You're not actually like aligned to a club or an organization. So everything's sort of like self-invested. But when it comes to it, like the Grand Slam tournaments are all organized by, say, like ATP or the WTA. So they're actually affiliated with that. So as a player, there actually would be some sort of contract that you'd be obliged to follow to be a member of those associations, which I'm sure involves rules about media, which it did. That's why they get fined if they don't attend, because those associations and tournaments and everything won't exist if they don't have the backing of such things. So it is a contractual obligation, and it's the same in every other sport. Like the Premier League in the soccer, if the coaches or the players that get asked to if you get man of the match, if you don't go to the press conference, you get fined. If you're the coach, you don't go to the press conference, you get fined. It's like that in most sports where the coach has to rock up. But in saying that, if the questions, this is my point to the argument, if the questions you don't like, there's actually no rules in a lot of the places that you have to actually offer up much of a response. You just have to physically be there. So,
interesting.
I mean, how you choose to answer them, that's potentially where the athletes could go about it. But I do see that, the questions that they often get asked are quite probing and can, go back to our earlier points about lead to poor states of mental health. When you've just lost a game and you have to front up to a press conference.
Well, absolutely. But then I guess if you're putting your journalist hat on, or if you're a media mogul and you're saying, well, hang on, I'm paying a lot of money here, losing is a part of life, is that then, if you're speaking from a journalist side, then, is that a bit, you can't have it both ways as well? Because, if you're paying a lot of money and you need to ask some tough questions. And if the athlete's that's not prepared to answer them back, then is that the journalist's fault as well? Or is there's got to be some sort of give and take here? It can't just all be, well, athletes are receiving bulk amount of money, and surely there needs to be some sort of meeting in the middle there, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there, Rob. It's you got to take the good with the bad, and if you win, you win. If you lose, you lose. That's just the nature of the sport, and that's what you've got to learn as you grow up as an athlete. So you do have to be resilient and deal with that. Obviously, I know if I just got done, I probably wouldn't want to rock up to a press conference. But playing down at the Maui tennis courts, there's no money involved there. So
but that's it though, isn't it? Like if athletes boycott those responsibilities, and should they expect to receive the same remuneration then? I think is an interesting point. There might be, things around that say, well, no, hang on, they haven't fulfilled their obligations as an entrant into the tournament. So I don't think there's a particularly right or wrong answer, because both sides, I think, have very credible claims as to, potentially being impacted upon by the other. So it's interesting because athletes do need the media attention. They need the publicity in order to build them brand up and help them lead a life that they wish to lead. And then, the journalists still need information out of them so that they can, retain their jobs, and media can obviously portray that to match their return on investment. So it's pretty tough, isn't it? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, which when we're talking about solutions from here, they're very difficult, because it's hard to sort of keep all parties happy, I reckon, in this, and which would be a minefield commercially. But when we talk about the commercial angle, there's a few people, or there's one particular group that I spoke to you about, which was interesting to see, and that is the mental health app that's called Calm. So they offered to pay the fines for athletes who wanted to boycott their press conferences, obviously due to the similar circumstances surrounding Naomi Osaka in terms of mental health. So first and foremost, this is probably a genius marketing strategy from Calm because of how well run it is in terms of the target demographic and basically showcasing their ability to help people's mental health. So from that point of view, it's absolutely outstanding, regardless of whether it's a gesture or whether it's grandstanding or whether it's meaningful. I think it's A+, don't you?
Yeah, they've done very well for their own personal brand.
Absolutely. It's on brand for them, yeah.
Yeah, I think the only thing that you have to be careful about, and it's probably a bit of a touchy subject though, is but just making sure that people aren't using the mental health reason to get out of it just because if they don't want to do it. Yeah. If someone uses mental health as a reason, generally there's no further questioning or probing into what that specific issue is.
Yeah.
And it has been used wrongly in the past with people trying to cover up other things that are going on within an athlete's environment. So that's one thing that it's very contentious, and you don't want to be on the wrong side of it. But I just hope that people that are using this as their reason for not attending a press conference or not doing something is because it actually genuinely is the reason, and that they're going to get help and assistance about it. I don't like seeing when people use it to take the mickey to get out of doing something and then they're not actually doing it, because it takes away from the seriousness of mental health as an actual issue with athletes. and people in the general public. If you're using it as just a cop out, then it starts to really take away from the seriousness of it.
Yeah, absolutely. We also don't want to promote what you say in the fact that Calm have offered to pay for anyone who doesn't rock up to a press conference. If all these players boycott it, then there's a fair chance there might be some, fiscal and financial backlash from that in tournaments to come as well, which people need to think about, because you can't just have people not rock up and not fulfill their obligations, which is helping to pay for their prize money as well, which I think is a pretty dangerous tightrope to be walking on. So again, it's interesting, and it's not something that there's an immediate solution we have either. Like, I think this is something that's just going to go. It's going to continue because, again, you got two big pillars of sport pushing against each other. So I don't have the answers for you on this one, Damo.
Yeah, I think the thing there as well is that if every player or numerous players are coming out about it, then I think they need to review how they're going about it, because it might be a wider issue. Like you said, we don't have the answers to it. Nobody has the answers to it. But I mean, particularly in tennis, if that's what we're looking at, if a number of athletes keep coming out, then maybe the ATP and the WTA need to consider how they conduct their press conferences afterwards and set guidelines for that if that's a way to go about it potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think censoring questions is the way to go, or just asking positive and fruity questions. I think that there still needs to be some sort of resilience in athletes, and despite the some of the horrendous things that happen online, you still need to be able to face to that defeat and face your obligations there as well. But I think that's all we've got time for in this episode as well. But some pretty interesting discussion points there, and hopefully some of the people within the network will have comments as well on what they might feel is some practical solutions, or the landscape of this in terms of player access and social media and some of the negative repercussions from that. But thanks to you, Damo. We'll see you next time, and hopefully Sean will join us for one.
Cheers, Rob.